Welcome to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast for farmers and ag professionals by the Iowa Farm Bureau, bringing you the news, experts, and educational insights that matter most. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our May 12th edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler. As we inch closer to summer, we're also heading into storm season here in Iowa, which means it's the perfect time for us to touch base with the folks at Farm Rescue, an organization that helps farm families facing a crisis, whether that's an illness, injury, or a natural disaster. This is also a time when farmers are taking important steps to protect their emerging crops. So we'll chat with the Chief Test Engineer for Iowa State University's Digital Ag Innovation Lab about the results he's seeing while testing precision spraying technology. But let's start with Farm Rescue and Terry Johnston, an Iowan who serves as the Manager of Industry Relations for the organization. Spokesman reporter Bob Bion caught up with Terry earlier this month.
Terry, hey, thanks for being with us to provide some updates on Farm Rescue and its efforts. How about we start by giving our listeners a brief overview of what Farm Rescue is and the mission behind the organization?
Yeah, so Farm Rescue is a volunteer-based nonprofit that helps farm and ranch families in crisis. So if for whatever reason the family's inhibited from getting their crop in or out or feeding their livestock, we come in with equipment and volunteers and help them plant the crop, harvest the crop, feed the cattle, whatever we can do to help them get through that tough period of time, which can be an illness, an injury. We helped some folks in southwest Iowa last year after the tornadoes plant their crops. Their equipment was tore up, of course, and didn't have the ability to do that. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. We serve 9 states. Iowa is one of those.
Yeah, so how did Farm Rescue get its start and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, it just started as an idea of our founder, Bill Gross, who is a farm and ranch kid from North Dakota, came up on the farm in the 80s and knew what tough times were. In fact, he was not able to go back to the ranch because of those financial conditions. And as his career as a pilot, he decided he wanted to figure out a way to give back and help folks going through a tough time. And so he just got the idea of borrowing a tractor and planter and helping some folks in the spring 20 years ago. It just kind of ballooned from there. The next year he got some volunteers. And so 20 years later, after starting in North Dakota with one family, we're serving 9 states. We've served almost 1,200 families. We're looking forward to another 20 years.
You talked a little bit about the types of assistance that Farm Rescue provides to farm families. How do you decide where and when to step in?
It's simply them asking us. We have an application process on our website. Folks can just go on there and say, hey, here's who I am and where I'm at and what I'm going through. Then our board takes a look at each of those applications, and most are certainly accepted. There's a few exceptions, of course, but they just simply need to reach out and ask.
We recently, a couple weeks ago, had some severe storms that rolled through the Storm Lake area and then up north, kind of near Algona, up by the Minnesota border. So it's early in the storm season, we know, but what are some of the most recent projects or cases Farm Bureau has been involved in?
So far, we've planted for 3 families in Iowa this spring, and they've so far all been health related. We've not gotten the call, which is amazing across all the states that we cover with all the tornadoes. And of course, we do check in with counties that we hear of or know of that have been damaged. But so far, we're glad people haven't gotten hurt or their equipment hasn't gotten torn up. But so far, no one has reached out this spring for that. Of course, there was several of those cases last spring and the spring before that.
Right. So you talked about health concerns for families, natural disasters. Are there other situations that you step in with?
That's the crux of it. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen to folks. It can be a mental health illness. It can be a cancer or something like that. They could be involved in a farming accident, whether it's an illness or an injury or natural disaster. And that can be a lot of things. Of course, tornadoes are obvious ones, but flooding oftentimes creates problems, especially with livestock folks. Their feed gets destroyed or washed away, or fences and that sort of thing. Wildfires, we've hauled a lot of hay the last few years because of the massive wildfires that I'm sure folks have heard about in the media. We had some folks suffering from drought last year and had exhausted all their feed sources. And so we were able to get some donated hay and haul into those folks. So there's a wide range of reasons for us to be able to help. And we certainly want to help anytime and any way we can.
I've been out on a couple of sites with you over the last couple of years. It's just amazing the help that you provide these families. Just kind of curious, in your time with Farm Rescue, is there anything that sticks out with you or any site that really shows the impact of what you do?
I've been asked this question before, Bob, and it's hard to answer because each of the cases are unique. But the thing that impresses me, there's a couple of things. One is how eternally grateful these folks are for us coming in and helping them. It many times means the difference between them staying as a family business. It can be a multi-generational farm and not. And so we're really proud of the fact that we can step in and get a family over the hump, get them through a tough time, let them focus on whatever it is they need to recover from, whether it's an illness or injury or loss of equipment or whatever that is. The gratitude and the graciousness of that. And I would say, secondly, I'm just so amazed, and you probably found this to be the same in meeting our volunteers. We've got over 600 volunteers from 49 states that come from all over and just drop what they're doing and spend days or weeks sometimes helping families. They are the most compassionate, giving, self-sacrificing folks you will ever want to meet. And if you feel you've lost your faith in humanity and good, man, it's just amazing to be at one of these cases when we're helping one of these families, because the volunteers want to be there as much as the family needs the help. And it's an amazing experience.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The volunteers are just incredible. I've seen them in action, and you're right. They want to be there just as much to help out as they can. And it's just been wonderful. So, volunteer-based, 600 volunteers. Are there any partnerships with organizations or companies that you're especially excited about?
As you know, that's my role, is to form those partnerships and build relationships. And since we're in Iowa, talking about Iowa, and I happen to be an Iowa farm kid, I've been very proud of the organizations and companies in Iowa that have stepped up. Of course, we have national sponsors like John Deere and Anheuser-Busch, but we've had all kinds of folks step up, Farm Bureau being one of them. I'm a third-generation Farm Bureau member. I'm so proud of what you folks have done to help get the word out and help financially. And of course, the commodity groups, the soybeans and corn growers groups, and Ritchie Waterers, Thunder Creek Trailers. I hate rattling them off because I'll forget somebody or leave somebody out, but we've got those folks all listed on our website if you want to find out which organizations. Farm Credit has recently come on board nationally. We've got several regional farm credit organizations that have supported us. So we've got dozens and dozens of supporters. We need more. We'll take more. Like everything else, our costs and expenses have gone up, but we've had tremendous response from the folks here in Iowa. Helping get the word out is the main thing we need help with. So if anybody listening to this now or in the future hears of a family that could use our help, please reach out to us and let us know that. Folks tend not to ask for help. It could be a couple reasons. Maybe one is they've never heard of Farm Rescue or misunderstand what it is we do or how we do it, or they're just too bashful to ask. They'll feel like, oh, somebody else probably needs the help worse than I do, or if they're helping me, they can't help someone else, or the neighbors will do it. And those are all legitimate, but we love partnering with neighbors. We can help take the burden off of them so they can get their own crop in or out or feed their livestock, and then we can focus on the family. And so it's a great community effort, and we're not trying to replace the neighbors. We're just neighbors from a little farther away.
Yeah, you mentioned you are currently in 9 states. Let's see if I can remember all of them. So it's Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Kansas, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. So the 9 states. Any plans for expansion in the future?
We want to continue to expand as long as it makes sense. We can get the volunteers. We have the expertise in that area. And of course, the financial support is the big one. It takes a lot of investment to move into new states because you've got to expand our equipment base, whether we're owning it or buying it or leasing it. So, and of course, logistics and staff. We are a very lean organization. We only have 6 employees at the moment. We're wanting to grow that, but that, of course, takes money. But yes, we absolutely want to continue to expand our help to the neighboring states. Indiana, Ohio would be obvious ones, Missouri, Kentucky. There's a lot of places that we would love to grow into and fully plan on it in the next 20 years to be able to expand that. We've helped about 1,200 families in the last 20 years, and my guess is the next 1,200 are going to come much quicker than that as we expand. So we want to help more families in each of the states we're already in, and then, of course, help as many as we can as we expand our territory.
So you also touched on this a little bit, but let's kind of remind everybody, how can farmers who are in need of help reach out to Farm Rescue? What does the process look like? How do you mobilize, and what happens?
We have an application area on our website, which is www.farmrescue.org. There's a simple application there. Also, our phone numbers are there. You're welcome to call us. If you're apprehensive about filling out the application or maybe not sure how to answer the questions, please call us. We'll just walk you through it. Ben Smith is our organizer here for Iowa. He is more than happy to help. He will actually come to your farm, sit down at the kitchen table, and help devise a plan of how we can help with what machinery is needed and volunteers and so forth. So we try to make this as simple as possible to get help, but it's just as easy as reaching out. Fill out the application. If you don't want to do that, just drop us an email or a phone call, and we'll be in touch very quickly and make sure that we can get you looked after. Sometimes folks have warning, right? They know they're going to be going through a surgery or have an anticipation, but many times it's very short notice. We can get an application, get it turned around, and get folks there planting or harvesting in a very short period of time. That's one of those things too, Bob. If you've seen the inner workings, but it seems to me like it's a miracle every time. We help around 100 families a year. And when you think about what the logistics are, we've got seeders putting in canola right now up in Montana, and then vice versa down in Kansas. So we're spread over a lot of area with a lot of equipment, but we can do it. And don't hesitate to ask. And even if you call and ask, doesn't mean you have to accept our help. Or if you refer a family to us and we reach out to them, they can say no. But we always want to talk and have a conversation. And if there's a way we can help, sometimes it's just they just need a couple of volunteers for a couple of days or a week to help fill in for somebody that's sick or injured or having an issue or whatever. So we'll be flexible and try to help these folks any way they can.
Lastly, maybe we can kind of finish up with this. The volunteers. The volunteers are the lifeblood of your organization. If somebody wants to volunteer or donate or become a supporter, what do they do?
Again, go to our website, farmrescue.org. There's a spot there that you can sign up as a volunteer. It's just a simple form to fill out. You can list where you're from, how to get a hold of you, what your experiences are with equipment, for example, or maybe you have a CDL, anything like that. You can just fill that out, and one of our volunteer coordinators will be in touch to get your information, and you can decide, I'd like to help this time of year for this many days, and where geographically where they'd like to work, where they want to stay maybe in Iowa, or maybe they would like to go up and plant canola in Montana for a different experience. Of course, to donate, if you're a business, feel free to get a hold of me. I'm Terry Johnston, terry@farmrescue.org. We can always use more corporate or business partnerships and sponsorships. And then we've got an opportunity for individuals to donate either one time or on an ongoing basis. All that can be done right from our website. But again, anytime you have questions, please reach out. Happy to talk to anybody that wants to learn more.
Thanks, Terry. Life changes in an instant for farm families who encounter tornadoes and other natural disasters. So it's good to have an organization like Farm Rescue that's always prepared to jump in and lend a helping hand. If you'd like to learn more about Farm Rescue, join their relief efforts, or request assistance, visit farmrescue.org. Next, let's bring on Ben Covington, the Chief Test Engineer for the Digital Ag Innovation Lab at Iowa State University. Farmers love technology that helps them do more with less, protecting their bottom line and the environment. That's why we wanted to talk with Ben about the latest developments he's seeing in precision herbicide application technology. Bob Bion has the story.
Ben, thanks for being with us today. Can you walk us through a little bit what precision or targeted spray technology is and how it differs from traditional broadcast herbicide applications?
Certainly. When we start to think about targeted spray technology, we really need to take a step back and start to think about where we're coming for in our future with agriculture. Starting back into the early 2000s, that's the first evolution into some of this individual row technology. And that really started with the planter. Really, right here in Ames, Iowa, it was sure stop clutches that we put on a planter. That gave us the ability to have very good sectional control. Well, then we need to move the timeline forward a little bit. Planters have now had that technology. Now we can bring it into the sprayer, and that's individual nozzle control. That really came out starting basically in the 2016 timeframe with a John Deere sprayer, and then that was quickly followed by multiple other companies. But that gave us the ability to have individual nozzle control, really reducing the amount of overlap that we have. Now we're getting to the point where we can actually do targeted spray application because we have that individual nozzle control. Instead of kicking on the whole entire section or bank all at once, now we can really start to identify where those weeds are or some of those pests in those fields, and we're just going to target just that exact small spot.
What types of detection capabilities are available in these systems? You kind of mentioned these nozzles, green on brown to green on green, and what are their specific use cases in Iowa cropping systems?
Great question. Yes, those are the two biggest ones that we're starting to see right now in the marketplace is basically a system that can go out into a fallow ground style field. It is going to look for a green shaped or green colored weed, and then it's going to be able to target and only hit that one. The other one is what we call a green on green solution. That's going to be allowing us to go in crop. It's going to actually start to identify the leaf shape. And if it's anything other than what the field is primarily growing, it's going to target that and classify that as a weed. So needless to say, if we're here in Iowa and we're going into a green on green situation, we're probably going to be doing a post application in like a soybean field. The systems in the cameras are able to see that leaf shape of that soybean, and they're going to be able to say, hey, I'm in a soybean field. I should see leaves that look like this. Anytime that it sees a leaf that doesn't look like that, it's going to register that as a weed, and that's going to trigger the nozzles and cause them to actually spray that herbicide onto that plant. I will say that here in Iowa, though, we're probably not the larger consumer of the green on brown type of technology. That really has a really big impact in some of our western states, like our western Kansas, our Oregon, Washington, Montana. Some of those areas that really don't produce two crops or don't produce a crop on the field every single year. That's going to be a huge chemical savings for those guys out there because they're going to do a chem fallow rotation and they're not going to grow a crop there just to really reduce the amount of tillage and to save on soil moisture.
So your team recently conducted a large field scale demonstration on 415 acres across 5 soybean fields. What were you hoping to learn from these tests?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things is like this technology, it's been out there for actually a couple years now. And so being a part of Iowa State University, we wanted to see, is this something that's going to be quickly adopted by local farmers and our customers? Well, on that 415 acres that we did, one of our biggest takeaways was how do you actually make that work here in Iowa, right? It's going to be some real equipment cost, and can we actually justify that in our post-application period? Well, one of the smart things that I think that we did is that we didn't just do a typical conventional tillage. We actually started to put this where we did different types of tillage practices in front of it. One was in some no-till situation, one was conventional. We also did one that was following a really heavy application of cover crops. And what the biggest thing that we learned is that most of the weeds that you're going to find in your field are going to be around the outside edges. So for us, we already learned some takeaways that by looking at some of those weed maps that were generated by the amount of gallons and the different targeted pressure of the fields, really we're going to start to take that step back and be like, you know what, we're probably going to do a broadcast application around the outside perimeter of all of our fields. That's going to use up most of our chemicals. And then in the middle of the fields, we're just going to be able to use that targeted boom, boom, boom. And then we're going to see some drastic herbicide savings.
Yeah, so the results showed herbicide savings ranging anywhere from 44% to over 90%.
Yes, the 44%, that was really going into a no-till situation. The no-till fields, they just seem to hold a little bit more of those weeds than what we would have liked. When we're starting to talk about the 90% savings, that's definitely coming into some of our conventional. Now, I'm going to say this is a one-year scenario, and I'm not going to tell everybody that we have to be 100% conventional every time. No, it was just some of our findings that we started to come through and see. I think a lot of that is going to be, we really need to give a good hard look at how we do our pre-plant herbicides. That's going to be the backbone that's going to hopefully carry us through on a lot of our weed protection throughout the summer. And on our no-till situations, well, you know what? Sometimes we really need to step up our pre-plant just a little bit more just to ensure that we're killing any of those young little weeds as they're starting to come out.
Can you describe how weed pressure, pest management practices, and pre-emergence herbicide breakdown influenced outcomes in different fields?
Perfect case. Yeah, it's basically our no-till fields. You have to play the weather, and we don't know what our weather is going to be. For last year, we put out our pre-plant herbicides, and we never got the rain to help actually take some of those down on our no-till fields. So it really got hung up in some of that residue on the top. This year is a little bit different. We did the same exact scenario, but yet we've been getting blessed with several rains here in this last week. So all of my herbicides are actually starting to work down throughout that residue into that topsoil profile. So I'm expecting a lot better pre-plant herbicide efficacy this spring than I was last year.
So what are the key components that make these systems work, like boom height control, vehicle speed limits, or individual nozzle control?
All three are going to play a huge part into making sure that you have success. I'm going to lead off with the very first one is going to be boom height control. And that's not something that people really think about when they think about sprayer and being successful. But the boom height control is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to ensure that when our fan opens up on that single or double nozzle, whatever the configuration, it's going to make sure that all that product actually makes it down to the spot where that weed is growing. If our boom is flapping around too much and we're getting way too high or way too low, that spray pattern is not going to be where our computer or system thinks it is. Boom height is going to be very, very critical to make sure this is good. Next part is you have to have a camera on there somehow to be able to see the weeds. And it's no different that if you're hovering 18 inches above the ground, you might miss some weeds that are out in front of you. And the same can be said if you're 4 feet above the ground, you're going to have a little blurred vision and it's going to be harder to see. So without good boom height control, this is probably going to be more of a challenge. Our nozzles though, individual nozzle control, that's the beauty, is that this is technology that not only is offered by one OEM, there's several OEMs that are equipment manufacturers that are actually coming out with this. That guess what? We have options. That way you're not just dedicated to one brand and one color. You can start to add this technology to several machines in your fleet.
So you talked a little bit about the weather. So let's talk environmental factors like wind, soil type, rainfall. All impacts the accuracy or effectiveness of targeted spraying systems.
Very much so. Wind's a big one, right? As we want to make sure that if we're going to be placing these chemicals, we need to be placing them on the actual plants that get affected. If we have too high of wind speeds, guess what? We're going to have off-target application, and that's really not going to be able to affect us and use the chemicals the way we want it to be. That's one of the key things is when we're starting to talk about this targeted application, it's not at 18 or 20 miles an hour. Right now, the systems really limit us to about 15 miles an hour. That is the maximum speed that you can achieve. And that's just due to the fact is that it takes a little bit of time and computing power to be able to see an image, recognize what's a weed and what's not, and then to be able to determine whether we're going to fire that nozzle. And we really have to play in the environmental conditions. And guess what? If we're a little windy, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. So that's another big one that we're going to look at. Soil moisture, I believe, was another one that you talked about. You know what? It really comes down to we need to make sure that when we're spraying out there, spraying these weeds, we're doing what the label says, and we're actually following that more importantly than ever before. Basically, nobody wants to have off-target injury. And guess what? It all really starts by understanding the products that you're spraying and making sure that you selected the right ones for that field and particularly that pest.
So how reliable is the weed detection system in real time? And what sort of performance validation or metrics are you using to evaluate it?
That's a great question. And this is stuff that we've worked on thoroughly here at Iowa State for several years. And we like to do something called a blue dye test. Before we ever put any chemicals inside the machine or the tank, we're going to put in basically a blue forestry dye. And we're going to go out into the field the day before we intend to actually spray it with real herbicides. We're going to go through and make a pass or two and just start to see, did we actually hit the weed that we thought that we were intending to kill? It requires a little bit of scouting, but I think that's actually really important because I feel like a lot of our farmers nowadays probably don't do as much scouting in their fields for post-application as what they should. It's basically, hey, the corn's about this tall or the soybeans are this high. You know what? I think I need to probably go fire up the sprayer, go out and take care of it. By actually getting out in the field, walking around and starting to identify what weeds you have, that really can help you tailor your cocktail mix to make sure that when you select those herbicides, you're selecting the right ones.
So the demonstration reported an average savings of about $15.70 per acre, nearly $6,500 total. How significant is that in the context of average spraying costs for a farmer?
It's huge, right? I mean, every time that we go out into the field, it's going to cost the farmer money. And now we did have some savings. And I tell you this much, we learned enough from last year that we are actually going to do a better job this year of maybe reallocating some of those dollars. So when we went out there and we started to do See and Spray, the first thing that we noticed is there's always a lot of weeds that are on the outside edge of the field or near the waterways. That's going to take maybe a little bit more of a blanket broadcast rate. But then when we get into the middle of the field, we're barely kicking on the nozzles just because there's not a lot of weed pressure. What that does is it saves some of those herbicide dollars back. And because we're saving them back, it actually gives me the opportunity to make a second See and Spray pass in that field when the crop gets a little bit taller. That second pass that goes back in there, guess what? That's when I can really ensure that if I did have any weed escapes, we're going to go ahead and take care of them.
Beyond savings, how can precision spraying influence long-term weed management strategies or herbicide resistance concerns?
Well, it's actually something that's really cool is that when you're not spraying a whole entirety of a field, we can really start to think through the chemicals that we're using and start to say, hey, usually I don't use X, Y, and Z chemical because I'm going to see a little bit of injury or some burn to the plant that really is going to be kind of detrimental. By using a targeted See and Spray style technology, it kind of does open up my chemistry portfolio a little bit more, knowing that, hey, it's okay if I kick on these 3 nozzles and I kill maybe 10 or 12 beans that are around my targeted weed. That's okay, is because I'm not going to use that whole chemistry on the entirety of the field, right? And that's one a big thing that, like, if we're talking about using maybe it's a gramoxone. That's a chemical right now that really works very well on a lot of bad weeds. I wouldn't recommend a farmer going out and spraying gramoxone on as a broadcast application, but in sometimes on situations like this is something that if we're really reducing the amount of chemicals that we're going to use, we can start to use a little bit more potent of a chemistry just to ensure that we're actually killing that weed dead, and we're not going to allow it to just get a half dose or something like that where it's going to continue to reproduce, multiply, and put a lot more of those resistant seeds out in the soil.
How useful is the as-applied mapping for future field management planning?
Oh, it's critical. Like for us this year, it's like we are actually able to start to predict some of our herbicide savings and start to figure out like where we can actually spend some of our dollars and start to think about buying that more expensive product that has that better residual or something like that. That's really something that's pretty crucial. The other nice part about it is as a farmer, I can start to look at some of the areas of my field that maybe have some drowned out spots or some wet spots. I can start to actually tailor a prescription that says, hey, in this certain area of the field, we're actually going to be able to put out maybe 1.25% of my normal rate of herbicide, just due to the fact is I know it's been drowned out before. I know that this is an area that we've seen weed pressure before. Let's go ahead and make sure that we put out that chemical pre-season just to make sure, hey, we're going to have this covered when it comes back time for our post-application.
So what's the potential for scaling this across more acres in Iowa, especially given the varied field conditions and farm sizes?
I don't think See and Spray is going to just jump off the page and everybody's going to buy it next year. But what I am going to say is that our big commercial companies that are building these systems, they're out there to work with the farmers. You're going to have some of your big companies that they're going to offer this machine completely decked out straight from the factory, that it's just another checkbox to order from the dealership. But you know what? What if you're the guy who just bought a sprayer maybe 2 or 3 years ago and it's still really good? That's where we're going to start to see those options as well. The biggest one that comes to mind is like Precision Planting. They recently released with their Symphony, their individual nozzle control, Symphony Vision Spot. And that basically is going to allow the farmer to take any color of machine, whether it's 1 year old or 10 years old, and they're going to start to be able to add this same See and Spray technology to it, really to justify owning it even longer. So I think we're really in a fun spot in agriculture, especially on the equipment aspect, that it's going to start to show up. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this here in Iowa, just due to the fact is that currently our particular plans, we really do go into our field with 2 passes. We're going to do a pre-plant and then we're going to do a post. So we're spending a lot of dollars just on herbicide, and let's try and save a little bit more of that.
Yeah, kind of on that note, kind of see this technology becoming maybe standard in the next decade? Or will it remain more of a niche for certain operations?
No, I think this is something that's going to probably have a pretty good adoption rate. And I'm really going to start to look back to maybe some of the same things that we've seen before. And that's going to be what we're going to see on our planters, sectional control. Anymore, it's pretty common to be able to go out and find a planter that is either electric drive or hydraulically driven that's going to have individual row capabilities to shut off to save the seeds. I think we're going to start to see some of that coming down the pipeline with our See and Spray technology. Now, is it going to be for every farmer? No, of course not. But that's not something that we're here to decide today. I think if a farmer is going to be interested in it, I think it's going to be something that they'll be able to find either used machines on the market or take their used machine and start to add this technology to it.
What areas of research still need work to improve the consistency and performance of precision spraying?
Well, the biggest thing is everybody likes to go fast, right? When you talk about spraying at 15 miles an hour, your big operators or your co-ops, that's just not a number that they're used to anymore. They're used to seeing this technology and seeing how well individual nozzle control works. We're pushing all the way up to 22 miles an hour consistently with those machines. By having an individual nozzle control, we're really able to shut off the different nozzles going in and out of the headlands. Before, we had to slow down because that all had to be done by the operator using his thumb and his fingers to shut off sections. That's old technology. New technology means that we can do it fast. For this targeted spray application, yeah, 15 is still pretty slow. But this is something that's still in its infancy. We just keep making strides every single year, and we're starting to document and see that within the different products that are being delivered, that guess what? We're getting faster and faster, and our hit rates of being able to identify those weeds just continue to grow better and better and better.
Quick synopsis of your demonstrations and your work this year.
Basically, I think what we're going to target this year is to not only cover 400 acres, we're going to take a larger approach, and we're probably going to be closer to 1,000, if not 1,200 acres. One of the cool things that we're actually starting to look into is we planted some non-GMO soybeans, right? That's something that we don't really see non-GMO beans anymore. And because of our success that we were starting to have with this See and Spray technology, we're going to start to go back in and see if we can't figure out how you can utilize maybe a little bit more of that niche market to be able to grow some of these non-GMO beans and yet still have a good clean field. For us, you can have a higher price on some of these products when you sell them at the local elevator. And frankly, if we can go back in and use See and Spray, guess what? We might be able to turn a little extra profit in our own bank accounts.
Advice for farmers looking to get started, looking at this, say, hey, this is kind of cool. What do they do?
Don't be afraid, right? I mean, there's going to be some neighbor out there. That's the beauty of being in a farm community, is that everybody knows that Farmer John got a brand new sprayer, and everybody's going to be like, well, I hear you got a See and Spray sprayer. Well, you know what? Don't be afraid to actually start to have those conversations and start to see, hey, Farmer John, how did your first year with it go? And he might be just like me, is like, well, I learned some things. I learned I sprayed more chemicals around the outside edge of my field than I ever have before. That's one of the beauties, is like this technology is starting to grow. And I would say if you're interested in it, start to talk to maybe some of your equipment manufacturers, ask for a demonstration, or a lot of them are actually already putting on field days just to showcase some of this technology to the farmers. Get out, start to look, because I guarantee there's going to be somebody in your area that actually probably has one of these.
Thanks, Ben. Farmers are always looking for the next opportunity to raise the bar for their farms, and often that involves new technology. And as you heard Ben say at the end of that interview, one great way to assess new technology is to talk with other farmers who are trying it. That's just one reason it pays to grow your network of farmer peers locally and across the state, and if you need help doing that, your local county farm bureau is a good place to start. That's all for this edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you picked up some helpful information and that you'll join us for our next episode on May 26th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.